suspect all of us might like one, so we can bark.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with this, the regular meeting of the Littleton City Council today, Tuesday, April 16th. Roll call.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
And we are joined this evening by Troops 263 and 596. Would you guys mind leading us in the pledge, please?
Start. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we begin our regular meeting this evening, I'd like everybody to take a moment of silence in respect for the events in Boston yesterday. Thank you. Okay, any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Jim.
Well, I'll just cover it in my council report.
Okay. Any changes to the minutes of the study session for March 26th? Seeing none, those are approved. Any changes to the regular meeting of April 2nd? Jim?
Yes, on line 98, which I think is like the third page of your thing, it talked about, it was during my report, and I was talking about the Executive Board for the Colorado Municipal League, and the minutes in there states I'm not eligible, and really I am eligible for 3 more terms. It's just I chose not to run again for the Executive Board at the conference in June. But I am eligible for 3 more terms if I could get myself elected at that time.
Any other changes?
And I made my comments to Wendy earlier.
Great. Okay, seeing none, those are approved as amended. Report, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, my brain just went blank. I was trying to make my notes beforehand. Oh, got it. Sorry. At the, I believe it was at the last council meeting, council received a question from citizen regarding status of impact fees or a request to for the city to look at those impact fees, and I believe I responded during that meeting that the city was engaging a consultant to look at the impact fees because, as we had indicated to the council, the code that we currently have does not pass the legal nexus muster, and so we're moving as quickly as we can to get that impact fee evaluated. I'm not sure if I was clear enough to say the current impact fee that we have is really around commercial use and does not address residential, multifamily residential, or to an extent mixed use, probably in a comprehensive manner. And so what we're looking at is a complete evaluation of those impact fees. And so we're moving forward on that as quickly as we can. There was also a question about looking at apartment studies and vacancies and trends and that type of thing. And staff, obviously we take direction from the council, but in this case staff actually does believe that there's some value in looking at the general trends of what's happening in the housing market. We are coming out of a recession. We do have a lot of development, primarily multifamily, as you're aware, that is starting to look on the horizon. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about Littleton. I'm talking about the Front Range metro area. And so it is, I think, valuable information for the council to have. And so we're going to be working on that study as well, and probably set up some study sessions on that particular issue as we can get speakers and data available to you. So we're moving forward on that. And the last issue actually was a question to the council, but I'm going to respond on behalf of you to you. And that was a question around interest in a moratorium. And a moratorium obviously has significant ramifications if council were to take that action. But in this case, I think the request or the concern was around a moratorium on rezones, and without specific parcels and properties being identified. I will tell you that we have probably received applications on all the areas of concern. And so a moratorium would have no effect on that because the city has already accepted those applications. And so it is my recommendation that because all the concerned properties have already been received by the city, that they need to go through their appropriate process, and a moratorium would not have the effect that the concerned citizens had raised. So I'm sure there's more, but considering that took a struggle, I'm going to stop with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Beckman?
I do. Good evening. I've got some notes that I want to refer to. I want to take this time this evening to discuss the railroad depression and the heavy rail transportation corridor through the city. Several times in recent council sessions, comments and issues discussed the light rail, the railroad depression, and the railroad tracks, and talk of what the boundaries are of a transit-oriented development would be and what a transit-oriented development includes. Clearly, the railroad depression seems to be more on our collective community radar screen than it has in many years. Councilmember Cole has been contacted also and done some research on this, but contacted by constituents just as I have. And I have a certain amount of information on it, and I'd like to share that to start off tonight. I think now is the time to begin to ask some questions that I hope will result in a staff discussion and maybe a study or a council study session to talk about the challenges of the unique railway system we have in Littleton. The fact is that the rail corridor is and always has been a heavy rail corridor. And only in the last 13 years has the light rail system been part of that rail system. Only since the 1980s have the railroad tracks been depressed below Main, Alamo, Prince Street, and then elevated at Bellevue. Since the 1800s, the railroad in Littleton consisted of at-grade crossings and slow-moving heavy rail traffic. With the creation of the railroad depression in the 1980s and the changes in the corridor that occurred because of the RTD building the light rail, everything has changed. For over 100 years, though, heavy rail traffic traveled north and south on two heavy rail lines at speeds of 15 to 20 miles an hour, one northbound and one southbound. The community was established over those same years, and with a few exceptions, the housing and business buildings that exist today were built around that reality. But this has all changed since 1999, when RTD paid for changes in the heavy rail track corridor to facilitate the heavy rail movement to meet Burlington Northern needs while allowing for the introduction of light rail into the corridor. And we're talking about $35 to $45 million of RTD money to a $177 million project. This was a very big thing. That was when things changed as far as heavy rail traffic and its movement through the city. RTD paid for and the bill at Burlington Northern changed the heavy rail corridor as follows. And those of us that were in the community at the time watched this. The tracks were rebedded and concrete ties were installed. The southbound track was relocated 100 feet to the east. A third track was installed. Something called the Littleton Interlock was created, in which two tracks were expanded to the three tracks, with the ability to route trains in either direction on any of the three tracks using 7 switches that were installed. The height of the southbound tracks was changed. The tracks were straightened, and various berms that had provided barriers around them were removed. Speeds increased from the 15 to 20 miles an hour that we'd been accustomed for years and years to 45 miles an hour in Littleton, while still slowing down to the customary 15 or 20 when it entered Denver. The county line crossing was improved from being at grade, and it allowed the increased speed of the trains picking up speed in Englewood going southbound rather than at county line, and slowing down if coming northbound at the Denver line instead of at the county line crossing. And noise and vibration issues arose from the changes in the corridor. So Burlington Northern got what it wanted, and the light rail came to Littleton. And now we're working to figure out exactly what a transit-oriented development is for Littleton. But there's no doubt that the availability of light rail makes living in Littleton a very good deal. Light rail is very good for us. But there is a but. All of these changes should concern us because they were done after the environmental impact statement was completed and the record of decision was filed in 1996. Those decisions were approved by RTD and the FTA, Federal Transportation Administration, and only discussed moving the southbound track 100 feet to make space for light rail. The record of decision had said that there will be no switching tracks installed in the corridor. It did not contemplate a third track. In fact, it was specific. There shall be no, and I'm quoting, special track work in the corridor. No supplemental EIS was ever done that took into account the changes and additions to what was initially proposed and presented. So that means that most of those changes that were installed, the ones that I just mentioned, were never discussed in the plan that was presented in the EIS and were not evaluated. There were no public discussions, and outside evaluations that are part of the EIS didn't occur for those changes. For example, the light rail system was built without such basic safety warning devices needed in a shared corridor, such as an intrusion detection system to give warning of derailments, and without an effective means of communication between the light rail engineer and the heavy rail engineers. And these and other kinds of safety items might have been part of an original design had they been part of the discussion, but they were not. So what we know now is that increasing the speed of 120 fully loaded coal cars or 80 cars of hazardous or noxious chemicals through up to 7 switches on 3 different tracks occurs daily within our corridor. And how is it working for us? There have been 2 major derailments in 2007 and 2009 in the railroad depression. The first one involved a loaded coal train which spilled coal all over the tracks, including the path of the oncoming light rail train, that only because of the alertness of the operator was able to stop before running into the piles of coal. It was December, it was snowing, and the light rail and heavy rail tracks are less than 16 feet apart. And remember, there were no means of communication and no intrusion detection devices. The other one in 2009 involved liquid sulfur cars, spilling and leaking as they crashed in accordion fashion in the Depression. And although it was dramatic and smelly, fortunately none of the really hazardous materials that travel in the corridor were involved. In both cases, the only available land to the side of the tracks outside of the Depression to assemble the recovery equipment and place the junk being removed from the tracks was on the grounds of the Littleton Cemetery, right where Ridge Road intersects at the tracks. I've even heard some discussion there was some issue since the cemetery was private property. The only entry into the site at the north is right in front of the Alexon Apartments. Fortunately, no injuries. There was no requirement of mass casualty, and there was no real emergency response into the Depression. So I guess the question is, why was there 1 derailment? Why were there 2 derailments? What has been learned and what has been changed in the corridor to prevent a 3rd derailment? As we begin to look at the future of Littleton and we talk about transit-oriented development and other neighborhood plans, I think we really do need to take a hard look at the elephant in the room. And that's the heavy rail corridor that's just a few hundred yards to our east, and it's integrated into our system. How do we deal with the reality of heavy rail traffic, switching tracks, combined with heavy rail at high speeds? It's about public safety and diligence by the city. And I think the time, now with it back on our radar and all the discussions, it's time probably to incorporate that discussion. I really would like to see the city manager bring together the people who have the facts and the information about our heavy rail corridor and to present this information to council. I'd like to know why we had the 2 derailments. I don't think we've ever had that answer and what the lessons might have been learned from it. I'd like to know if we can influence the heavy rail traffic in our corridor in such a way as to make it safer. Can we slow them down? And I'd like to move ahead with this so that the proper consideration is given to what it means to have a heavy rail corridor traveling through the heart of our downtown area each day at the high speeds and carrying the hazardous materials that they carry. You know, our basic mission of government is to provide as much possible safety and security as we can for its residents. There's no other public or private entity that's as concerned about the safety of Littleton residents as we are, those of us on council and city staff, and those of us that work in that environment. So I think it really is the time to see what we can do, where we are, make an assessment, and to do what no one else can do. So I'm anxious to discuss this further and to hear more at a study session. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes. Several items. One is South Suburban, I know, has a lot of their own communication, but with the Boy Scouts here tonight, South Suburban had their volunteer recognition last Wednesday, and a big part of that, of course, is recognition of the volunteers at South Platte Park. And it's always nice to see the level of time and talent, as well as the diversity as far as location that folks come from to volunteer at our local park. In addition to that, the Littleton Business Coalition met last Thursday morning. Brett Spence, who is the new president and CEO at Littleton Hospital, provided a presentation on the Affordable Care Act and its impact on health care, and there was a pretty vibrant discussion of health care in the area. It was also attended by Councilmember Bruce Beckman. In addition to that, the Bob McQuarrie room was dedicated at the Littleton Museum. Council members Bruce Stallman and Jim Taylor and I were able to attend. I want to say thank you to the now late Ray Koenig for being his very persistent self in looking at the naming. And what it means is that the true founder of the Littleton Museum, the room that is used to greet students as they come to an outing at the museum is now the Bob McQuarrie room. In attendance at the dedication were his sons and their families. One of them is sheriff up in Grand County. So it was a very moving moment for all those that were in attendance. And Tim and Lorena provided a very interesting background, as well as hearing the stories of his Bob's young sons as they grew up on the working farms that were there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you. A couple weeks ago, a couple Fridays ago, had the opportunity to attend the Doctor's Care 25th anniversary. And for those of you who don't know where Dr. Care is located, it's located in District 2 of Littleton, in the area that's becoming, to some, it's becoming known as Uptown Littleton, which is at 609 Littleton Boulevard. The organization has about 1,000 doctors, some paid, some volunteer. So that's pretty cool. It's a great organization. Kudos to them. Also, Hudson Gardens concert series is coming up, and it came to my attention here just a little bit ago that all the bands and groups they're going to have there, one of which is on April 8th, I believe, is going to be Kid Rock. So I thought some of us might be pretty excited. That's what someone was telling me. I don't think it's true.
Coming to Fiddler's Green.
I would love to go.
And the footnote.
Fiddler's Green. Oh,
Brett Michaels is
I would
going to
rather
Hudson
go
Gardens.
to
And the footnote is tickets for the summer concerts are now on sale.
Now on sale. Yes, thank you very much. And last but not least, to the city manager, if you will, could you, in the financials, could you send the section of the financials and some stats that go along with it, maybe, for the intersections that have the red light cameras? What I'm looking for is, the number of accidents before or after, that kind of thing, as well as some of the revenue that is generated, and even what the cost may be for those things. I do believe that's it. Thank you.
I'll follow up with you.
Appreciate it.
Bruce?
Thank you. Yeah, ditto to what Councilmember Sinanek said about the McQuarrie dedication, and kudos to Tim Nims and Lorena Donahue, who did an outstanding job. But the real takeaway, I thought, it was very touching ceremony, but it really brought into stark relief the sense of how one individual acting as a focal point or a lens really serves to enhance the whole concept of community. I think what I didn't know the gentleman, Bob McQuarrie, but the people who talked at the dedication, it was just clear that this individual, and there's been plenty of examples of other individuals like this, really took his passion for this particular topic and caused community to happen, which I thought was well done and a tremendous experience. A couple of other real quick ones. I wanted to extend my appreciation, maybe our collective appreciation, and kudos to staff, in particular Diane Ray Tomaso, who's a consultant, but Andrea Mimnaugh, who's on the planning staff, for the Arapahoe Hills Historic Preservation Guidelines book. Extraordinarily well done. It was, I think, the result of a grant, but that particular neighborhood, the whole Arapahoe Hills neighborhood, which basically is a bit west of Lowell Boulevard and south of Federal, in your old stomping grounds neighborhood roughly, is just a magnificent neighborhood from an architectural perspective, mid-century modern architecture, as well as a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright influence, and is now on the National Register of Historic Places for the country. But the guidebook is just terrific. I did attend a meeting at the South Metro Chamber on the 10th of April, which was hosted by John Brackney and the group on how do we go about attracting energy industry jobs. There used to be, and there are still, a lot of energy industry jobs in the South Metro, and it was attended by people like Mayors Kathy Noon from Centennial, Randy Penn from Englewood, and Nancy Sharp and Nancy Doty from the county commissioners. Good discussion in terms of how to reach out to some of these entities that are maybe looking to bring these types of jobs locally, the engineering and the management type jobs, and see if there's an opportunity to attract them here. LPS Board, Littleton Public School Board on the 11th, talked a lot about the school science materials, as well as educator effectiveness legislation and the Senate Bill 213, which is the school finance legislation. I won't go deep on those. They've got plenty of information on their website if you're so interested. Good Fire Partners meeting today, a lot of discussion amongst Littleton Fire Rescue, Littleton Fire Protection District, and Highlands Ranch Metro District, which collectively are the three partners that contract for fire services from the city of Littleton. And a lot of conversation on the new transport policy implementation with respect to response times, unit utilization, resource depletion, quality assurance, et cetera. I think it's interesting. They've only been at this roughly about 30 days, but it appears that cash inflow is exceeding cash outflow from the effort. But it's pretty clear as well that there's better customer service being rendered or patient service being rendered. We're in the process of essentially resetting the business model at that level and working closely with hospitals and the ER rooms, for example, at Littleton, Porter, and Swedish, and so forth and so on. So good work there. A little bit of market intelligence. I was talking to an individual at the King Superstore at Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, and we may, collectively, staff may already be aware of this, but I thought I'd pass it along. I forgot to do it today offline, so I'm doing it now. This is an individual who's got some visibility to their potential expansion plans with respect to the Walgreens space that's to the north of the existing King Super space. Apparently there's a grade issue which we may be aware of. They're trying to solve that issue. There are some new stores obviously at Bellevue and Federal, as well as a new refurbished one out in Lakewood near where I work. I don't know if the city has an opportunity to go in and assist in terms of, we've talked periodically about maybe some sales tax forgiveness. Obviously not a lot of sales tax associated with grocers anymore, but there are certain things that maybe could be done, possibly from an infrastructure perspective, to address the grade issue that might encourage them to think about moving a project like that further. It's strictly market intelligence. This was just an offhand conversation, but I thought I'd share it. Lastly, the ever popular, often imitated, never duplicated, force of habit. Epic, fourth annual Epic Spring Cleaning Event will in fact be held on Saturday, April 27th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Two locations, the Home Depot at Bellevue and Federal, and then an auto repair shop called Auto Lab at 4000 South Broadway. Community is encouraged to bring gently used donated goods, household items, clothing, food, certainly non-perishable food, which will be donated to interfaith community charities and ARC thrift stores. The proceeds from all of this, and in fact, in the case of food, for example, for interfaith, will go directly to people who are in need within the community, underprivileged, and or people with developmental disabilities. The money stays within the communities, up and down the Front Range, and it's a wonderful opportunity to share some of what we all have to help those of us who are less fortunate. And for full disclosure purposes, as always, my day job is with ARC Thrift Stores. I make nothing off of this. It's strictly to help both ARC Thrift as well as Interfaith. If you do bring a donation this year, we will give you a coupon. So you can get a 5% off coupon at Home Depot or a services coupon at reduced cost at Auto Lab. So if you want to maximize your donation experience, bring one donation to each location and you get 2 coupons. So there you go. Hope you have a chance to do that. Thanks very much.
Jim.
Yes, in the latest Colorado Municipalities magazine, there was an article written by Kelly Nardi. If you haven't seen that yet, it was very well written, and so might want to take a look at that. I also wanted to mention, too, about the museum event with honoring Bob McQuarrie. I talked to Ray Koenig's widow at that event, and she said she was very thankful for the museum staff, that if it hadn't been for the museum staff, this would have never come to fruition. And so she was very thankful that they had followed through with the suggestion that her late husband had made to the City Council and its request. I was privileged last week to be part of a contingent group that went on the West Line rail corridor. It was a group of developers, financiers, engineers, planners, that sort of thing. I was one of 3 elected officials invited to go along, and we stopped at the sites that were going to be redeveloped along that line. That corridor opens up to the public next week. I think it's next week, it's on the 26th. Thursday. So I think it's a free day of riding light rail on the West Line on that day. Last Friday, Phil and I were at South Suburban to present Nancy O'Connor with a plaque honoring her years of service with South Suburban. She was one of our guest citizens here, but it was one of those things that kind of fell through the cracks, the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing, and nobody got the plaque for her. So Phil had to leave early, and I was able to present it when they did their ceremony, and thanked her for all the things that she's done for not only South Suburban, but for the city of Littleton. At the last C470 meeting, after it was over with, I talked to Brian Weimer, who is the chief engineer for Arapahoe County, and he asked if the city of Littleton would be interested in doing something about Platte Canyon Road. Platte Canyon Road is in Littleton, Columbine Valley, Arapahoe County, and Jefferson County. 4 jurisdictions over that 2-mile or so long road, and nobody seems to take responsibility for any of it. So he was proposing that we go to the state and ask for some of their special funding they got under the RAMP program, and see if we can get a planning grant to look at what needs to be done with that road, whether it needs to be increased to 4 lanes, whether it just needs to have intersection improvements. So I said, yes, we were interested. I talked to Don Rozier, who is the Jefferson County Commissioner in South Jefferson County. They're very interested. I talked to Gail Christie, who is the mayor of Columbine Valley. They are interested. So I think that if Ryan's able to pull all this together, I'll probably be asked to sign a joint letter to CDOT to ask for this funding money. I have a question about, we've got a program coming up for tree planting along the Alta Aspen Grove. And I guess I'm going to ask, because of the severe drought this year, that we take a look at whether we want to do that. And if we decide to go forward with doing that, that maybe the city's water trucks could help with the watering of that, and that we put in our 2014 budget to get a water tap and install the water lines that's needed to do that. We cannot, and from what the information I've got, we cannot buy the water tap and install it and plant the trees we want to plant with the money we've got available and budgeted for this year. So let's divide it over 2 years. Let's look at the planting this year with the city helping South Suburban with part of the water truck to get the trees watered through this first year of planting. And then next year, look at doing a water tap and installation for one that'll be a permanent water source for those trees. I think it needs to be done, but I think we need to be very careful because we are in a severe drought. Next Saturday is the big day, Be Involved and Give Day. There is volunteers being asked to come to Big Dry Creek. There's registration at Progress Park Shelter as well as at the confluence of Big Dry Creek and South Platte River, and for registration. And at the end of the cleanup along Big Dry Creek, the Chamber of Commerce will be having a lunch for all those volunteers at their headquarters in Southland. I also would like to ask that we look under general business tonight to have a motion to support Debbie Brinkman, Mayor Brinkman, to run for the executive board for the Colorado Municipal League. They require a letter of support or a resolution. Let staff design that. I'd ask that Pro Tem Stallman be the one who signs it. That would go to CML and officially get Debbie endorsed by this council for the Municipal League's Executive Board. And finally, the Dr. report. The Live, Work, Play Awards is on Wednesday, April 24th. It's going to be at the McNichols Civic Center building in Civic Center Park, close to the Denver City and County building. We, at the last meeting, delayed our urban growth boundary changes until we get Metro Vision 2040 plan adopted. There are no current requests, and we want to get the new plan adopted before new requests do come in. The Advisory Council and Agency meeting had 52 requests for funding. 21 of them are brand new to Dr. Cog this year, which had to do with probably the sequestration and losing funds. Dr. Cog is looking at about a $500,000 loss of revenues through the federal sequestration, but the state may be making up part of that funds with some bills that are going through the legislature right now. Board of Directors are tomorrow night, and we'll have a further report on that later on. And that's it.
Aggie.
Well, just two things, much shorter. First, I support Councilman Beckman's request to have information have a study session related to the railroad issues that he raised. And then I made a informal request to City Manager, but for the record, I'm requesting that the policy statement, the legislative policy statement that we approved, last regular meeting, be revisited after the election in November. So I suggest in December, because I think that, along with other things, need to be revisited so that they reflect whoever's on current council for the 2 years. So I just wanted to make that formal.
We'll be looking at everything.
And then I see these scouts in here that look like the last thing they want to do is to be hearing us talk more, but I suspect they're not wanting to say something to us tonight, but I would remind them anytime that they have issues that they would like to make us aware of in the city, suggestions, because you guys, I'm sure, have some good ideas. You are welcome to let us know, and the mayor will tell you when in our agenda. You can do that if you want to do it tonight or in the future. Is that right? So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Citizen appearances. We do have a scheduled public presentation by Executive Director of Meals on Wheels, Diane McClemens. Diane, come on down. Hi. Yeah, right there. And just speak into the mic.
Okay, thank you. I'm Diane McClymans, Executive Director of TLC Meals on Wheels, and I'm just here tonight to thank you for your recent financial support to our program. We certainly appreciate it. And also to introduce myself as the new Executive Director of the program. The previous Phil Miller has retired, and I've been appointed, and I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure if you all realize that TLC originally stood for Town of Littleton Cares, which is what we were incorporated as originally. Our delivery area is now much larger than that, so we've kind of abbreviated it so people don't think of us as just a Littleton organization. We did, however, spend 35 years in the Bradley House, and we are currently housed in the Ames Elementary School building, which is a Littleton public school building. So Littleton is still at the heart of our program and what we do. We currently serve about 100 residents from the city of Littleton. Of those, a third pay a reduced rate for our services, and a quarter are fully subsidized. But really, our program is not just about the meal. We also offer a friendly visit. Most of our clients are homebound and often feel isolated, and often our drivers are the only human contact that they have in a day. So the visit that they get from our volunteers often helps them stay in their home, gives them the comfort and security of a welfare check, and it's really better for everybody if they can stay in their home. I invite each of you to come to our program and ride along on a route. We'll send you out into Littleton and let you experience firsthand the heartwarming effect of delivering meals and that friendly visit to the residents of your community. So I encourage you to contact me. I'd like to leave some cards. If you come around, 10:30, 11 o'clock, it'll only take an hour, hour and a half of your time. Monday through Friday, I can schedule that. I'd love to see you out on a route with us. And again, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, and welcome. You can hand the cards to Wendy, the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
I'd just like to make a comment. I drove for Volunteers of America in their meals program for a while. And you're exactly right. There are people who are isolated. The only people they see all week long is whenever I arrive there with their meals. They wanted to talk. I was able to schedule. It's always a problem to deal with, but I certainly understand that problem.
Yes, the visit is really just as important. We say the meal is just the excuse to ring the doorbell. So, and our program, we deliver 5 days a week, so we get to see those people more often than the once a week. I know Volunteers of America often does a frozen meal program. So, thank you for that. I hope to see you.
I have a question. What do they do on the other 2 days?
If they need the support, we provide, some of our clients get extra meals on Friday. We also have a grocery program. Once a month, we deliver bags of non-perishable food to our clients who have indicated that they need that support. So they do have other food for that. And we actually, for Littleton residents, there's about 30 residents of our 100 clients that receive that support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Diane.
Appreciate it.
Okay, this brings us to unscheduled public appearances, and this is an opportunity for any citizen to express an opinion or ask a question regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected, and typically issues are referred to the city staff for follow-up, information or research, and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If you'd like to speak, you get 4 minutes and come down. Raise your hand. I'll call you to come down. Please give us your name and address. Would anybody like to come down this evening? Norm?
Somebody in the peanut gallery said, of course. Yes. 2 things quickly. For Mr. Stallman, I was going to respond a little with more detail to your question at the end from 2 weeks ago. I was going to interject some levity, and in light of recent national events, this isn't the time, even if this is the place. The other item, so we'll see, maybe 2 weeks from now. The other item is regarding staff and last week's postponement, rescheduling of the city council study session. I know, I believe Wendy and also Marlene expended some extra effort to get some of the usual attendees the information that the meeting wasn't going to occur because of the weather, and so I'm noting that. You guys might not have been aware of that directly, but it's appreciated, particularly by me, and I think some of the other folks that were called and didn't waste a trip driving down here. So thank you to staff.
Thank you, Norm. And can't blame staff for canceling a meeting. I actually did that, assuming that the weather people might have been correct. Well, we all learned. Although we did have, I believe, 3 people attending that meeting coming from all areas of the metro area, and regardless, it appeared as though that evening there was some dangerous roads, so it was probably for the best. It has been rescheduled for April 30th. Okay. Kim?
Good job, Wendy, on that.
My name is Kim Glidden, 5739 South Curtis Street, Littleton. And I have a letter for City Council. If I could just read the body of the letter in, basically some questions. My business, the Pottery Studio Gallery, has been located in downtown Littleton on Curtis Street between Main Street and Alamo Avenue for 8 years, and I have the following questions. Now that the city's downtown neighborhood plan identifies Curtis Street as the only north-south major pedestrian route, what will it take to have a traffic light and pedestrian crosswalk signal installed at the intersection of Alamo Avenue and Curtis Street? Second question, what design has the city's Fine Arts Committee selected for bike racks in downtown? Where will they be located, and when will they be installed? Third, is the city considering a comprehensive wayfinding plan for downtown Littleton? 4, at what cost will the city make available for purchase sets of the street pole banners displayed on Main Street to downtown businesses located on Alamo Avenue and Sycamore, Prince, Nevada, Curtis, and Rapp Streets? And 5, will the city be collaborating with downtown businesses in funding applications to Colorado Creative Industries? And I appreciate the city's council's assistance with the answers.
Great. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
If I could just add to what Kim presented, those were items of discussion at the Hoodlum meetings also in some variation. And so there is another group of people.
We also discussed some of these in depth at our breakfast with the group. So, Kim, we've got some good information to return back to you. Absolutely. Carol?
I'm going to want to use the overhead. Can Doug be notified? I'm Carol Brezak, and I live in the 4th District. 2 weeks ago, I was here to tell you what I had observed on January 29th. When I come before you, it's not without thought and time spent double-checking the facts and the content of what I have to say. On April 2nd, after I sat down, Debbie responded to my comments in a way that made me go back and take another look at my statements. As a result, I decided that I had not done all that I could have done in my research of the chain of events. Therefore, I requested, under the Colorado Open Records Act, a copy of the request for the paid leave of absence that our former city attorney was referenced to have submitted. Here is the response I received. Oh, that'll never show.
I think he can.
Can it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tiny.
I think it's.
That's so much better, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Okay. The point that I wanted to make about the response was that I was told that the document does not exist. Got to read it. that the request was made orally. I was also told that if the document did exist, that I might not be able to have the document. The Colorado Open Records Act defines what is confidential and what is not confidential under the label of personnel files. The portion of a personnel file that deals with the personal information, such as the address, financial information, and other information maintained because of the employer-employee relationship, are protected. However, personnel files that are exempt from the protection of the Open Records Act include employment agreements. The request for a temporary paid leave of absence would be an employment agreement, thus not protected. Back to the request. It's almost impossible for me to believe that an attorney would make a verbal request regarding their employment rather than submit some sort of legalese document requesting a paid leave of absence. But I have been told that a written request was not made. So knowing that the request was made orally, I need to ask the council, which one of you had a face-to-face with our former city attorney and received the verbal request for a temporary paid leave of absence? Can I get a response? Peggy?
I didn't.
Jim?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay. Bruce?
Carol, we'll respond back after. And we're not trying to be evasive, but these are legal issues and these are personnel issues. And I think council needs to be very cautious about their responses based on the liability that we hold legally. So we're not trying to be evasive, but we need to confer with our council on that first, please.
Okay, I would disagree that answering a simple question whether or not you received a request that has been made public, I mean it's a public record, whether you received it orally face-to-face with the former city attorney should not be a difficult question for any one of you to answer. I'll wait for the response. Additionally, in reading the terms of the former city attorney's resignation and severance agreement, there's no mention of a paid leave of absence, just a resignation. A resignation agreement that became effective on February 1st, 4 days before receiving the actual resignation from the employee. An agreement that was intended to be confidential and kept from the public does not make this council open and transparent, which is what the citizens expect from their elected representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam? We're not going to.
Good evening, council and staff, and I wanted to thank City Manager Penny for his response to my questions from the last council meeting, particularly that the response was made publicly, because the comments and concerns that I've voiced are about the future of the city and they're on behalf of the city. And I tried to combine a number of comments that I'd heard from many citizens over the previous months. So I really appreciate that you made a public comment and that you acknowledge that there's value in a study of the Denver metro housing market to the staff, and also that the impact fees for residential development are being assessed. That's a big empty gap, and I'm really glad the city is taking care of it. A personal comment about the library room dedication. When I was a kid, the librarian was Mrs. Brown, and that was in the basement of what's now the melting pot. She was old when I was a kid, and what I remember was she had no teeth. She was a person who obviously, she was probably born in the 1800s. She lived through very hard times. And I just want to mention Mrs. Brown. So I wanted to add a concern tonight about the comprehensive plan, which needs to include an emergency response plan And that has to be at a city level. It cannot be done at a neighborhood level. It's got to be at the city level. So I appreciate Councilmember Beckman's comments about heavy rail. That obviously is part of the emergency response plan. And I think it also should inform zoning plans around that corridor. And I'm not drawing conclusions. It's just part of the discussion when it's developed. So the other item that I mentioned was, in which city manager cannot address, is to ask the council members about how they feel about putting a hold or a moratorium on considerations of rezoning for high-density residential until some of these studies are completed. And I totally understand that existing applications are already in the works, so I appreciate that. And one of those is a block from my house. So I already got that, but I'd really like to hear what the council members think about that publicly, whether that's tonight or another time. Not just me, but I think you could easily name 10 or 12 people over the past few months who would like to hear what the council thinks about a moratorium on requests for high-density residential housing in the city.
Okay, thanks. Pam, regarding the emergency plan, the city does have a pretty extensive emergency plan that's been prepared, so that would be, we could definitely put that in front of the Planning Commission to make sure that that's incorporated.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a single motion, and all ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote. A consent agenda item can be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item 7A. The City Council, this is the approval of a second amendment to an agreement for professional services with Judge Chris. The City Council contracts with its relief judges to fulfill judicial services for its municipal court. City Council was scheduled to interview relief judges on April 9th, 2013. The meeting was rescheduled to April 30th, 2013, and due to the weather. Presiding Judge Feldman will be unable to serve on the April 25th and 26th due to a conference he has committed to attend, and so Judge Chris has agreed to extend his contract until April 30th, 2013. This will make that official. 7B is a request for approval to cancel the June 19th regular City Council meeting due to CML. The Colorado Municipal League 2013 conference is going to be held June 18th through the 21st in Vail. And at this point, we have one council member out of town, and the other 5 council members have registered for the conference. So we will need to cancel our June 19th regular meeting. And item 7C is a request for approval to schedule a special City Council meeting on April 30th. And the purpose is to interview and appoint associate judges. Decisions to appoint these judges must be made at the time of the special meeting to ensure ample judicial coverage of the month of May. Pursuant to Section 2B of the legislative rules, special meetings shall be called by the mayor at the request of a majority of council. Generally, special meetings shall start at 7 p.m. Notice of special meetings of council shall be given to the members not less than 24 hours before the time fixed for the meeting.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda items 7A through 7C.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Excuse me, Mayor. There is, the actual meeting is going to start at 6 o'clock, not 7. Because we're going to do the interviews first, and they're coming from 6 to whenever you finish, and then we'll do that afterwards. So it's actually going to start at 6.
Okay.
I just wanted to have that on the record.
Okay, so the special meeting will start at 6. Yes, April 30. Everybody okay?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, seeing no other business, we have Jim's.
I want to move that the staff prepare an endorsement letter or a resolution in support of Mayor Brinkman for the CML Executive Board.
Second.
That's second.
And that have
Either one is-
Pro Tem Stallman sign it.
Is that a motion?
It was a motion.
Phil seconded it.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
You're obviously okay with this.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Now we're adjourned.
I thought something else was surely